Hi, my name is Ashton Osborne, and today we're going to be talking about Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. It's on the east coast of Brazil. My group chose this city, and I'm really excited to be talking about it because it's a city I've always been interested in. So here we go. So first, just to kind of give you an overview, or just so you can recognize kind of what city we're talking about, because you probably heard of it before. Rio de Janeiro was where the Olympics were held in 2016, and there's kind of three main attractions that people notice it by. First, we have the Christ the Redeemer statue, which is on the left here. This just kind of looks over the city, and it's one of the main kind of monuments there that people tend to go visit. Second, up here on the right, we have Sugarloaf Mountain. It's one of the main natural beauties there. It's kind of a really cool natural creation that no one really expected, so it's something that really draws in tourists. And lastly, in the bottom right, we have the beaches, which are very popular. It kind of just gives the city that beachy feel. It is a very beachy town, but also with the city mix also. Just to give you a little overview of what we'll be talking about and just kind of to give some more information on the city that we'll go more in depth in later. First, we'll just start with some history. The presence of this city grew in the 18th century because it really became a hub for a lot of trade, exporting and importing. There was a lot of mining that was found nearby, and so it ended up becoming the capital until 1960. Secondly, the economy. It's a really large manufacturing city, and this is because it's the biggest port in Brazil. There's a large amount of imports and exports that come through here every single day. The government in general, Brazil has a federal republic, but specifically for Rio, they have a federal presidential constitutional republic. They tend to have a lot of freedoms, which is really good. But at the same time, the way they are working their system with their free healthcare and also free public education, it may not be most efficient, and that's something they could work on. For religions, since it was settled by colonists a long time ago, they brought a whole melting pot of religions. 90% of people claim that they are religious, which is a really large amount, so that's really good for them. And then 75% claim to be Roman Catholics, which is the most next to Rome itself. And then the demographic, there's a large European demographic from the colonists, African population, and a partially large Asian population. The population is 6.32 million in total. And lastly, the official language is Portuguese. Just starting off with some history, we'll go like a little more in depth to get kind of understand the country a little more. It was first ruled by the Portuguese, who settled in the Guanabara Bay in 1502 in January. The bay kind of forms an opening that looks like a river. So when they found it, they called it Rio de Janeiro, which means River of January, because that's when it was found. The French also wanted this city and this location because it is such a good spot on the water like that for imports and exports. And it led to a 2-year pretty intense war that ended with the Battle of Rio de Janeiro, where the Portuguese held claim of the city. The city then moved. They were scared of future invasions, so they moved to a safer position up on a hill, and it was later named Castle Hill. And then, so from there, they started producing a lot of sugarcane, which gave them a lot of economic prosperity. And also, there was a lot of gold and diamonds discovered in the Minas Gerais, which is right outside of Rio. But during the 19th century, sugarcane was also found in a lot of other portions of South America, which caused a lot of competition for the city. So they kind of went into like an economic crisis for a while. Their gold and diamond industry also started to dwindle. So to kind of solve this, they ended up exporting a lot of coffee. And they also had the Portuguese royal family move in to Rio and live there for 13 years, kind of ruling over it, bringing them back to economic prosperity, which they did. They started building a lot of new modern infrastructure and ended up leaving after 13 years, which is when Rio and Brazil as a country ended up gaining their independence from Portugal. From there, they kind of ended up dividing Rio into sections, whether it was intentionally or not intentionally. They ended up having a north section, a south section, dividing the working class from the wealthy class. So now let's just go into the demographic a little bit. As you can see here, we have some of the data set out. There is a large white population, which tends to be made up of Europeans. Like I said, it is very like a melting pot of ethnicities because there was a lot of colonists that came and settled there. The colonists also brought a lot of slaves with them back in a while ago, and so there is a large African presence there, and the European settlers um, also from like all over the place. We have a lot of Germans, Spaniards, Italians, things like that. I also put a little graph in the bottom right corner here that kind of just shows all the different types of mixed races they have, which I thought was very interesting because there are so many different ethnic groups that came in, and so it made a lot of these mixed races down here, like mulatto and all the other ones under there. Once slavery was outlawed in the mid 19th century, Brazil was kind of seeking other people to do the same kind of work. So they were looking for low income workers, people that work for kind of low wages, a lot of Italians, Spaniards, and Germans, and then later Asians from Japan. So there is a big Japanese presence in Rio as well, which is very interesting. Now kind of going into the population. So there is a very large population in Rio. It's one of the most populated cities of Brazil. There's 6.32 million people living there, like I mentioned before. The area is 485 squared miles. And then so kind of looking what that looks like per area, we have 12,783 people per squared mile. So it is a very compact city. People are living in very close quarters, especially in the south or the north area of the city, the north section where it is the working class. It tends to be a lot more crowded there, which we will kind of see in some pictures later on in this presentation. Going on to everyday life, I just kind of added in a few things that I thought were very interesting. Like I mentioned, there are the city divisions, which I put pictures on the right here. The picture on top would be the north section of the city, which is the favelas. These are the working class people. They tend to live a lot more impoverished. There tends to be a lot more they tend to be like problematic areas. There's a lot of battling drug use. There's police brutality, shootings. It's definitely a lot more dangerous and an area to work on for the city. The picture below is the south, which is the wealthy portion of the city. For people that tend to be tourists there or traveling from out of the country, this is what they kind of see. They don't tend to see the favelas, which are above. So this is kind of the view we have of it, but it's really important that we notice that there are the two parts of this city. Like there's always one side to it and then there's the other as well. For the education, which is obviously a big part of a child's daily life, it's mandatory that you go to school from the age 6. You go to the middle school, and then after that, when you turn 15, you have the choice of going to the high school. So it kind of just depends if you are willing to do that. The education is free, but there is a very large expat population, which is people that migrated to this country, so they're technically not from there originally, and it's very difficult to get the benefits of the free education if you're an expat, because you have to go through a lot of Portuguese testing to make sure you have like the skill sets for it. So if you don't have that, it's very difficult to take advantage of the free education they are giving. Also, lastly, we have transportation. It is a little more difficult to get around. There's not really great car regulations, and the roads can be very hectic because there aren't those regulations. So a lot of people tend to take city buses or the subway, aka the metro. There's also a lot of bikers, but if someone were to go drive there, you just have to really be aware of your surroundings all the time. People tend to run red lights a lot. There's just not a lot of regulations or like monitoring going on for that transportation. Also, just adding in like a few things that I found that I thought were very interesting that are a part of the everyday life and customs of someone that lives here is that people are usually very, very welcoming. They've said to outsiders, like when people come in, they're so excited to show them their city and show them their town and their culture. They'll give you so many recommendations and they'll help you with whatever you need, which is really like nice to see from a city, especially if someone was wanting to travel there. Also, a friendly interaction would probably involve a lot of like touching or kissing, it says, which is very like a friendly manner to them, not like anything romantic, which would be so different from coming from somewhere like our American culture here. And then lastly, time is very flexible there. So it's okay for people to be like an hour or half an hour late. Like that's not something that's unheard of. If you say you're gonna meet at 6, like people are completely fine with showing up at 6:30 and that's just expected. So I thought those were all very interesting. Um, Now for the economy and business, which is obviously a very important part for this project that we're doing. It is the largest port in Brazil, like I mentioned, so it's a huge manufacturing city. It cheaply exports products, and specifically, it produces a lot of ships, apparel, footwear, textiles, food, beverages, chemicals, etc. Kind of more looking at the natural resources that they produce and export. They export a lot of coffee, sugarcane, petroleum, soybeans, and citrus fruit. There's a little graph up here on the top left that kind of shows the percentage of the things that they are exporting, also including the iron industry. The iron industry is very large there because there's mining right outside. So it's really easy for them to get that, kind of like package it up, get it ready, and ship it out of there to export to other countries. Other big industries that they have that don't include kind of exports as much, they have a really big tourism industry, as you can see, because people do tend to visit a lot. I mean, I would assume like most of us in our class have heard of Rio before. They also have a big real estate industry. So those are also very important to look at a lot. Their main import would be oil. They tend to get oil from a lot of Asian countries, specifically China. There's no oil fields nearby in Brazil, so it's very important that they're getting that from an outside source. Lastly, I added on the bottom here in the bottom left, the unemployment rate of 2020, which was 13.3%. It obviously was a little up this year because of the coronavirus, like it was for most countries. But I looked at the previous years and it's usually around 12%. Just for a comparison, the US is usually around 3 to 4% unemployment rate. This is usually around 12% unemployment rate. So it is about 4 times higher than the US unemployment rate, which was very interesting to look at. Now looking at some of the strains, because there are many strains to this place, I would say one of the first biggest ones is the tourism. If you look in the top left, I kind of have a picture of all these people looking at the natural beauty of Rio and all the cool things to see. It's like there's just a lot of different attractions, natural beauty, and man-made monuments, which are very interesting to see. $8.86 billion in revenue was reported from tourism in 2018. So it definitely is one of the biggest industries there. Also, it's important that I said like the locals are very welcoming and excited to help visitors, which I think really adds to that industry. Secondly, we have a big Rio is like a big cultural hub in Brazil. They kind of pride themselves in being like the cultural center of the country and kind of the symbol for Brazil. When other countries kind of, or like the whole world looks at Brazil, we kind of think about Rio a lot. They tend to have a lot of different festivals and things, and they really like to take a lot of pride in this. Specifically, they have the Carnival in Rio, which is held every single year. It's filled with parades, parties, and performances. The picture on the right here is from the carnival that happens every year. It's something that people look forward to all year long, like every single day. It's a cultural celebration where they really just get to be who they are as a country and like as a whole. And then lastly, it is a great place for imports and exports, which I know I've mentioned a lot, but it's just really important to say that because the location on the water is really great for that. There's easy access to those resources and getting them out there and into there, and it's really allowed the economy to thrive. Secondly, or lastly, we have some challenges and opportunities, and this is the most important thing to look at. We've learned so much about the city so far, but there's always things to improve everywhere, and that's what we really want to help the city do. So first, we're just looking at the crime, which I kind of have a lot of different pictures here that can depict that. Their main types of crime are murder, kidnapping, carjacking, and armed assault. These occur pretty regularly, especially in the favelas, which you can see here on the right side of the screen. That's what these kind of towns look like. The way we can kind of go about solving this is the police need to reclaim kind of their authority and power over the favelas from drug dealers, because they kind of tend to have like jurisdiction over that area. So the police kind of need to assert their dominance a little bit more over that is one of the ways that that could be handled. Secondly, the unemployment rate is very high, as we looked at, about 4 times as high as the US unemployment rate. There was a recession in 2015, and people have been protesting the high taxes, poor healthcare, and poor education, which has really led to a wealth gap, as you can see from the different sections of the city. A way we could kind of go about solving this is creating more unemployment opportunities, such as factory jobs with stable salaries. Also, better education to make workers more efficient would really help. Lastly, the water availability has been really poor in a lot of areas in Rio. As you can see in the bottom, there is not a lot of access to water. Around 12% of Rio's population has no access to running water, and 37% of water is lost through leaky pipes, fraud, or illegal access. So kind of a way we can go about solving this is new treatment plants. A lot of those have been built between 1998 and 2014, but since then it's kind of stopped, and we could really revamp that and add a lot more to help the community. Here's my works cited. You guys want to see like any more information or do any more research, or just ask me questions whenever. And now that we've really discussed all these economic, social, environmental, and cultural positions that Rio has and the situations they're in, we can really look into helping them grow, and that's what we're planning on doing in this project. So I hope you guys learned a lot from this presentation. Thank you for tuning in, and reach out if you have any more questions. I'm glad to help.